Well, hey, how's it going, Forum? Great to have your company once again. It's always good to be here, and of course, getting close to Palestine being recognized as a state. Well, I thought for my 10th anniversary of 9/11, I would go back to the original, back to the very first place that I first learned about 9/11 being a lie, and that was the EPA lie. Presented by Jimmy Walter, the DVD, the free DVD given out to anyone online. I was a recipient of that particular DVD, and I got it in the post. Well, I've shared that one around with a lot of people, and of course, sparked a lot of talk and a lot of debate about 9/11. I thought, what better way to salute 9/11 to go back to the Godfather of 9/11 truth himself, Mr. Jimmy Walter, live and direct. Here is my interview with Mr. Jimmy Walter.
Hello.
Yes, a very good afternoon. Is that Mr. Walter?
Speaking.
I hope I haven't caught you at a bad time, sir. It's Steve Johnson.
Now, you haven't caught me a bad time at all.
Oh, wonderful. I was wondering if you could briefly just tell the audience why you had to leave the United States.
Well, I didn't really have to leave the United States. It was for my own best good and protection. I mean, it wasn't like the government said, leave the United States. My car was attacked. The windshield smashed because I had anti-Bush, anti-Iraq war signs on it. The police refused to investigate it. The FBI refused to investigate it. My car was the only car in blocks that had been damaged. Only car probably that night in Santa Barbara. And the police said, oh, that's just random vandalism. The FBI wouldn't even take a complaint. They refused to take a complaint over the phone. I had numerous death threats. My secretary was threatened with death. She quit over it. We knew who did the threats and reported it to the police. And the police called the guy and said, well, don't do it again. And that's it. He had used the telephone. It was across state lines. It was a crime on multiple levels, but they refused to prosecute or even arrest him. Then on the national TV show, I had on the street while protesting in Santa Barbara, a guy came up and attacked me. I called the police, and the police started questioning me as whether I was interfering with businesses with my protesting, not whether or not, and then talked their way out of coming to even do anything about the guy who attacked me. I was attacked on the streets in New York during protests. I was lied about. I was protesting outside the New York Times in New York City, and the security guard came out, threatened me, then called the police and lied to them, said I was harassing people coming into the building. The police, I have to give the New York police credit, they came and said, well, what are you doing there? I'm standing here on the street with the thing. But well, you can't stand right there, you got to stand over here. So I went over and stood there. Well, this same security guard called back the police, said, oh, he's harassing people. Police came back again, so you're standing where you're supposed to be. I said, yes. Are you harassing people? No. They let me go. And then the final straw really was the TV show Penn and Teller on Showtime called Bullshit.
Uh-huh.
And they told people if they saw myself or Eric Huxtable or anybody carrying the book that Eric had published, and they showed our pictures on it, that they should throw us down the stairs. Now, I talked to a lawyer, and my lawyer said, well, there's nothing you can do about it. It's freedom of speech unless someone does attack you and you're injured and you can prove they got the idea from Penn and Teller. Well, that and all the other things that are going on in the United States just finally told me I don't want to live in this country and I don't want to be attacked. It's sort of like Hitler and his brown shirts. Mm-hmm. I mean, Hitler's government didn't attack the Jews. The brown shirts and the other people they stirred up attacked the Jews. And that was how I was feeling. The government was stirring all these people up with this anti-Muslim, and they were calling me a terrorist. The people in Congress said anybody who says 911 was not the Arabs, was something done by the government, they're terrorists because they're helping the terrorists. And so I just decided I would rather live in a different climate. Radically different climate as the weather goes here in Europe.
Would it be fair to say, sir, that you've got a better reception overseas than in your native country?
Well, politically and legal-wise, I got a better reception. But even here in Austria, in Vienna, a couple of years ago, Richard Gage of Architects and Engineers for 911 Truth was here. And I put up a little money for it, and I went to see it. The night I came back from the show, underneath my window was a burned $9/11 bill.
Oh.
That told me that they knew where I lived, and they were willing to burn my apartment down if I kept up any protesting. So even here, you're not out of the reach of these people.
Do you consider that the 9/11 attacks were directly related to the PNAC agenda?
Absolutely. The PNAC agenda said we need another Pearl Harbor, as David Ray Griffin's book, A New Pearl Harbor, clearly shows. Wolfowitz, Cheney, Bush was more a patsy than a principal player. Rumsfeld, these guys have been planning this thing for a decade. They wanted to attack Iran. They wanted the oil. They wanted to get rid of the freedoms that the Americans had, and it was their way of getting it done.
So what are your personal thoughts on Obama? Do you think he ever actually intended to change anything?
Well, I think, who knows what he intended to do. I think he was always a front man for nefarious interests. Look at the people who he hung out and was supported by in Chicago. Goldman Sachs gave him $1 million to be elected. There are 8, quote, former employees, end quote, of Goldman Sachs in the White House. I always called him a pretty face, not because he's pretty, but because he has a pretty political face and a silver tongue. But I consider him the Alan Colmes of presidents, just another faux liberal put up a Tony Blair who says you're for labor and the liberals, but you're actually a conservative.
So in other words, he's just a well-groomed actor portraying a role and reading a script.
Aren't they all?
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan. I mean, these people are actors, and they're reading scripts, and when they're told not to get off script, and they're told not to say anything substance, and then after they're elected, they do what they want.
Sir, do you still love America?
Of course I love America. I love many people in America. The problem is that America is going to the radicals, these radical Republicans, the radical neocons, the radical people who want war, the radical people in the military. They've taken over the country, and there's nothing I can do about it. And I tried. I mean, I put my life and my liberty on the line. I put all of my wealth, practically all of my wealth, 90% of it. I did my thing, and I failed. And sure, there's a lot of things I could have done better. I made a lot of mistakes, but we crucified the last guy that was perfect.
Well, sir, I do not consider that you failed. I was one of the recipients of your free DVD from Reopen 9/11, and that really opened my eyes. It was some of the most damning evidence of a government killing their own people by sending them into an area they knew was contaminated with poisonous materials. Now, that DVD alone should be enough to convict anybody that would do that to American people. Why do you think that they're untouchable by the law?
Well, first of all, over 50% of the American people believe the official 911 story was wrong. Actually, first of all, thank you for your kind compliments. And I'll have to modify what I said. I think in the very long run, we have succeeded. But, of course, I was hoping for a quick victory, a quick turnover, a quick real investigation. And in that sense, we failed. Now, the reason they're untouchable is that they have placed people at the gates, the gatekeepers. They control the Attorney General's office of Manhattan, the District Attorney's office of Manhattan. They control the Attorney General's office of New York. Likewise in Pennsylvania and in Virginia. If the District Attorney, the Attorney General, doesn't want to file charges, there ain't nothing you can do about it. He has 100% control of that. Same with the Attorney General of the United States. the newspapers are all controlled by Zionists and other people and corporate people who don't want this thing to come out. They're making big money off of terror. The arms industry, the media industry. Look at the media barrage yesterday and all the people watching all of this junk they're pumping out. I feel sorry for the families, but there are many families who agree with us, who think that the investigation should be reopened. I know that William Rodriguez, who represents many of the families, believes that there should be a real investigation. And I know he, on the Deadly Dust, is a big proponent of that. But Christy Todd Whitman, who was head of the EPA at the time, was told to lie by Dick Cheney and did so. And she was just another soldier in their corps. And they did it to protect America's commerce, because everybody had to go shopping, as they said.
So basically they had their pawns in place, ready to enact the PNAC agenda when it came down. They had all the judges in their pocket. They had all the courts in their pocket. So basically they got away with it.
They had the top guys, the gatekeepers, the people at all the bottlenecks in position. They had been. Remember, Reagan started in 1980. Bush was after him for 4 years. Then we had a brief respite with Clinton. But Clinton, you didn't see Clinton rolling back any of the powers either. The people they've been putting into the judgeships all along were in their pocket. The people that were the attorney generals were in their pocket. The newspapers are in their pockets. The banks are in their pockets. This is a formidable thing. Now, in my opinion, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, but it's also euphoric. It's a drug, and I think that they've overestimated themselves on this economic thing. I think that we're looking at a huge collapse. And while people will not revolt over politics, they definitely will revolt over unemployment, over economics. The reason they had the riots in London and Paris and all, they got so many people unemployed. They got nothing else to do but riot.
Yes, sir.
Same in the Arab world. They're unemployed. They got nothing else to do but riot. That's the danger point. As long as they kept everybody employed, they had control, because the people are occupied. They're watching their soccer, they're watching their football, they're taking the kids to school, playing golf, watching the porno channels, watching the fashion channels. They don't have time to revolt. They don't want to revolt. Say, oh, well, that's just the way of the world. Once you put them out of work, things change.
How much of a worldwide response did you get from your DVD confronting the evidence? Did you get much feedback from that? I
got it from all over the world. I was in Malaysia, Japan, all over Europe. We had a lot of response. Here in Vienna, we had 4 nights sold out, 400 people twice a night. Amsterdam was huge. The group that I really helped the most was in England, the 911 Truth movement there. I really kick-started them, and that's one of the biggest movements in the world right now, in proportion to the size of the country.
Right.
So, there's a lot of people out there, but, here's the deal. There's not a single politician in power other than Chavez and Ahmadinejad in Iran who said anything about 911 not being as the government says. Not one elected official in the United States. Cynthia McKinney said a few things, and they kicked her out immediately. Mm-hmm. Gravel, I forget the guy from Alaska. He's making a fuss now, but he's not in office. You can't get elected and say anything. And by the way, Obama was allowed to be elected. They control the voting machines. All right? If they didn't want Obama to be in office, and I think they did want Obama in office to take the heat, so that you notice now the Republicans are blaming him for the unemployment, blaming him for the economy, when it was Bush's policy and their obstructionism that put us where we are.
Do you consider that Obama is continuing on with Bush's policies?
We call him Obusha. Well, what's the difference? Show me the difference between him and Bush. Okay, he got this watered-down health care, which is really just a law that says you have to buy a health insurance from one of the health insurance companies. It doesn't have any of the good aspects of a single-payer plan. and he's expanded the wars. Do you see any troops leaving Iraq and Afghanistan? You know, he dumps them up 30,000 and then takes 30,000 out. I mean, you know, I see no difference. The whole Libya thing. Why are we in Libya? It's a totally unconstitutional war run by an organization that answers to no one. NATO is not an elected body by anybody. But a few politicians and the generals get together and say, well, we're going to go say that Gaddafi is a bad guy and take him out after we've been shaking his hand and saying he's a good guy for so many years.
You once offered $1 million reward of your own money to anybody who could prove that the towers came down without explosives. Did anybody even try?
I had a few fringe kind of guys put in stuff that wasn't scientific and say, yes, please pay me. No one... there was one magazine, Construction Demolition Magazine, I think is the name of it. I called them and said, why don't you do it? And they went with hemmed and hawed, and they never entered the contest either. An editor from the New York Times, when I was protesting outside the New York Times, said, well, you can't prove a negative. I said, sure you can prove a negative. I can prove there's not an elephant standing here on the street next to me. You can prove lots of it. You can't prove there's no pink elephants on Mars because we're not there. You can't search all of Mars. But there's certainly a lot of negatives that you can prove. So no one, if you notice, the NIST and the FEMA reports all stop short of full-scale proofs. They say, well, this might have happened to start this. But even when you look at the FEMA and NIST reports, you see that the basis for those collapses is not there. There is no scientific way to prove that the collapses were caused by the fires. And everything points to explosions. Now, the Twin Towers were different types of explosions, but Building 7 was strictly conventional explosives, obvious to anybody.
I think one of the most glaring anomalies about 9/11 is how many times the story has changed. Originally, they started off with the pancake theory, and that changed to, oh, no, it was sagging because of the heat. Do you think that any of these stories have rung true? I mean, true enough for people to actually believe it?
Well, okay, first of all, most people aren't technical. Most people barely got through science in high school and don't remember much of that. Okay? Most people believe of somebody because the person looks believable or is in a position of authority. They have a gravelly voice and look good on the NBC Nightly News or whoever's Nightly News. That's why they believe them. They do not have the scientific background, nor many of them the logical capability to process the information and come up with a conclusion on their own. So they're just going to take it on face value from who says it. Secondly, people don't want to believe their government would do something like this. My own brother said this to me. Well, I just don't want to believe that our government would do this. They don't want to believe, so they go into denial. They just say it's too much for them. If they really believed that, they'd have to quit watching the football games and the porno channel and go out and do something about it. They'd have to quit fishing and playing golf on Saturday and Sunday and go to meetings. They don't want to do that. They're addicted to these things, and they want to continue their addiction.
Yes, sir. It's a level of cognitive dissonance because it's just too easy to believe the lie.
Absolutely. You hit it right on the head.
Do you think the government have been smart enough to put in place their own gatekeepers within the truth movement?
Oh, absolutely. The people at 911truth.org in New York, the top people were all gatekeepers. One of them went to the Netherlands before I got there and told them not to form a group. This same guy stole T-shirts from me, stole DVDs from me, sold them on his own. The other two guys, all three of them tried to sabotage the event by introducing things that were patently false. You see, one of the ways these guys work is what's called limited hangouts. You put out part of the truth, and then the corollary that you put out an obvious lie. And then, so when the people who don't know, haven't studied it hard, come up and say, well, here's proof that 911 was some conspiracy. They say, oh, no, that's wrong because here we show you these technical reasons why it's wrong. They wanted to have some firemen on the show who said that he found the black boxes. Well, the black boxes were not found because they weren't there. So I was sabotaged, lied about, stolen from. Some people were just outright thieves who joined me and took money and did stuff. So you're going to get a line, and the people in line are not going to be the best people necessarily.
Are we talking about Les Jameson here?
No, we're not talking about Les Jameson.
Okay.
He's the one guy I do feel is upright, but I feel he was used as well.
Oh.
The petition they had was legally flawed. So this is one of these things. Okay, we'll get up a big drive. We'll have this big petition, and then it fails. And so who wants to go through it again?
Right. That's exactly what they did to Ellen Mariani. They poisoned her case before she went through the courts, and it was just thrown out.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's a question of let's poison the case. Let's poison the well. Let's wear them out. Okay, a little bit at a time. But I've met Les. I sincerely think that Les is sincere. The three characters I'm talking about, one guy, I can't remember their names because I should have looked them up for the show, but they're slimy.
Well, sir, what are your thoughts on Alex Jones?
Well, Alex has good and bad parts, I have to admit, and he stays away from a lot of stuff that he shouldn't, that he should come up. So my bigger problem with Alex is he has no action agenda. He has no action item. What does Alex want you to do? He said, oh, you live in a prison planet, there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, I guess what Alex wants people to do is buy a Berkey water filter and subscribe.
And gold, etc., yeah.
and sit around and get angry and get loud.
I mean, there can be no doubt about that, but if you don't make money in a capitalist economy, you can't stay on the air.
Yeah, that's true. After 10 years, sir, and it's now been the 10th anniversary just yesterday, what groups do you think were behind it? You consider it was all an agenda by the war machine to extend?
Again, it's sort of like the Kennedy assassination. There were many groups behind it. I think Mossad had a hand in it. I think parts of the CIA had a hand in it. I think parts of the military had a hand in it. I think the neocons, PMAC members had a hand in it. I think Larry Silverstein had a hand in it. He made a lot of money. And was there any other group? No, that's about it. I think all of those people had, there were people in the FBI that had a hand in it. All of these organizations had gatekeepers, people placed in positions that either had a direct hand in it or had a hand in the cover-up or the prevention of the exposing. The people who probably actually did it is 200 or less. And I was watching this thing on Iranian TV the other night where they had Gordon Duff and some other guy. And this other guy was an anti-U.S. war machine, but he kept saying, he wouldn't touch 9/11. He said this conspiracy is detracting from the real problem. And he kept saying, well, if you had this many people in on it, somebody would have talked. Well, excuse me, but the CIA has 100,000 employees and been running covert programs for 60 years. Nobody's talked, or damn few have talked. The mafia, the Italian mafia, the Russian mafia, they run stuff all the time. Nobody talks because they know, we're not going to kill you first, we're going to kill your wife and your children first, and then we're going to kill you. And so they're kept silent by being terrorized themselves.
Yes, sir. That was a clown from Answer. I remember seeing that.
Yeah.
Well, what message would you like to extend out there to people about 9/11?
Well, 9/11 is a clear example of how the United States and other governments justify war. We've got to really hold them accountable on the war and the economy. I don't think, I just can't encourage you to go out and work on 9/11, but I can get out and encourage you to go out there and work for truth in your government, work for real democratic elections, and get ready for the economic collapse, because that is when the chance will come. The revolutions have already started in Europe. I think they will start in America soon, and the rest of the world, just don't help these people. Try to stay on subject on the economy, stay on subject, or get us out of all these wars. We're not going to send troops to support anything wars anymore. Gaddafi, I don't care who they are. No more foreign intervention. The libertarians' economics is so flawed, I can't support them wholeheartedly, but in everything else I agree totally with the libertarians. No more foreign wars. I'd like to see human beings evolve into a higher animal, but that's going to take a few 10,000 years.
But surely you do agree that people these days are waking up faster than ever before.
Oh yeah, but it's economics is the big driver. Economics is the big driver right now. And, the question now is not 9/11 anymore. The question is Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Libya, Syria. They're going to want to go in next. Yemen, they're already inside of. We hear. We've got to stop them in these wars. And I think the economics and all of the wars are getting people to wake up and say, no more war.
Well, I think that's the overriding message, because war is certainly not healthy for anybody. It certainly doesn't help anything except the warmongering industries like the Carlyle Group. And, of course, the major players in...
Halliburton. They leave Halliburton out.
Oh, yeah. Halliburton, KBR. Who else is there? Lockheed Martin.
Of course.
Yeah. All the big guns, so to speak.
The big guns, rockets, whatnot. These are the people who profit from it, and the common guy suffers. You notice they didn't offer to cut anything in Europe. Greece didn't cut anything from its defense budget. Not Italy, Spain, they're not cutting anything from the defense budget. They're only cutting it from domestic spending. Same in the United States. Same in England. Cameron says, oh, well, we're going to have a better social front with these people in poor neighborhoods, but we're cutting back money.
Well, that's the IMF policies in action.
But you know what IMF stands for, right?
International Mofos.
International Mother. Mm-hmm. Every country they've gone into has ended up worse. This new one, and I'm terrible at names, Lagarde, she would say, oh, we got to do something. And I thought, well, maybe she's meaning stimulus. But no, she's meaning we got to pay back the bankers. So IMF, I can guarantee you, mark my words, that the economies of Europe and the United States will definitely decline sharply in the coming years, in the next 12 months, as soon as these austerity measures kick in.
When Mr. Rodriguez, who I consider an absolute hero, he saved a lot of people from the towers. When he was first brought to recognition, he was a guest at the White House with George W. Bush. But that quickly changed. Can you tell the people that are listening why?
Because Rodriguez was in the building and heard explosions in the basement. Now, explosions in the basement do not jive with the official story that the towers collapsed from the top. So they quickly dropped him.
So he was like a hot potato. He had too much information.
He had too much information and was willing to tell it contrary to what they wanted.
Is he well received around the world now?
Very well received. Very well. He's a hero in the Latin-speaking countries, in the Latin American countries, and Spanish-speaking countries. Big hero. He's a hero everywhere he goes. This guy is a genuine hero. I'm proud to say that I am his friend, and proud to have him as my friend. A real hero.
Absolutely. Well, I consider you a hero as well, sir, because you've expended your personal time and your personal energy and your personal fortune on trying to spread what is basically the truth. Despite all the things that it's cost you and all the things that it's taken from you, you are still fighting for the truth, and that is so commendable, sir. I want to congratulate you and honor you in this way.
Thank you very much for your kind words.
Well, that's all for me for now. Thanks very much for listening. As always, you take care. God bless. Do stay tuned in. Coming up very soon, I'll be doing an analysis of why we should boycott apartheid Israel. The reasons why Israel really is an apartheid state. That's coming up very soon. Stay tuned to the channel. As always, God bless. Take care. and ciao for now. Yes, a very good afternoon. Is that Mr. Walter?
Speaking.
I hope I haven't caught you at a bad time, sir. It's Steve Johnson.
Now, you haven't caught me a bad time at all.
Oh, wonderful. I was wondering if you could briefly just tell the audience why you had to leave the United States.
Well, I didn't really have to leave the United States. It was for my own best good and protection. I mean, it wasn't like the government said, leave the United States. My car was attacked, the windshield smashed because I had anti-Bush, anti-Iraq war signs on it. The police refused to investigate it. The FBI refused to investigate it. My car was the only car in blocks that had been damaged. Only car probably that night in Santa Barbara. And the police said, oh, that's just random vandalism. The FBI wouldn't even take a complaint. They refused to take a complaint over the phone. Unless someone does attack you and you're injured and you can prove they got the idea from Penn and Teller. Well, that and all the other things that are going on in the United States just finally told me I don't want to live in this country and I don't want to be attacked. It's sort of like Hitler and his brown shirts. Mm-hmm. I mean, Hitler's government didn't attack the Jews. The brown shirts and the other people they stirred up attacked the Jews. And that was how I was feeling. The government was stirring all these people up with this anti-Muslim, and they were calling me a terrorist. There were people in Congress, says anybody who says 911 was not the Arabs, was something done by the government, they're terrorists because they're helping the terrorists. And so I just decided I would rather live in a different climate. Radically different climate as the weather goes here in Europe.
Would it be fair to say, sir, that you've got a better reception overseas than in your native country?
Well, politically and legal-wise, I got a better reception. Then called the police and lied to them, said I was harassing people coming into the building. The police, I have to give the New York police credit, they came and said, well, what are you doing there? I'm standing here on the street. But the thing was, well, you can't stand right there, you got to stand over here. So I went over and stood there. Well, this same security guard called back, the police said, oh, he's harassing people. Police came back again, so you're standing where you're supposed to be. I said, yes. Are you harassing people? No. They let me go. And then the final straw really was the TV show Penn and Teller on Showtime called Bullshit. Uh-huh. And they told people that they saw myself or Eric Huxtable or anybody carrying the book that Eric had published, and they showed our pictures on it, that they should throw us down the stairs. Now, I talked to a lawyer, and my lawyer said, well, there's nothing you can do about it. It's freedom of speech. I had numerous death threats. My secretary was threatened with death. She quit over it. We knew who did the threats and reported it to the police. And the police called the guy and said, well, don't do it again. And that's it. He had used a telephone. It was across state lines. It was a crime on multiple levels, but they refused to prosecute or even arrest him. Then on the national TV show, I had on the street while protesting in Santa Barbara, a guy came up and attacked me. I called the police, and the police started questioning me as whether I was interfering with businesses with my protesting, not whether or not, and then talked their way out of coming to even do anything about the guy who attacked me. I was attacked on the streets in New York during protests. I was lied about. I was protesting outside the New York Times in New York City, and the security guard came out, threatened me.
Well, hey, how's it going, Forum? Great to have your company once again. It's always good to be here, and of course, getting close to Palestine being recognized as a state. Well, I thought for my 10th anniversary of 9/11, I would go back to the original, back to the very first place that I first learned about 9/11 being a lie, and that was the EPA lie. Presented by Jimmy Walter, the DVD, the free DVD given out to anyone online. I was a recipient of that particular DVD, and I got it in the post. Well, I've shared that one around with a lot of people, and of course, sparked a lot of talk and a lot of debate about 9/11. I thought, what better way to salute 9/11 to go back to the Godfather of 9/11 truth himself, Mr. Jimmy Walter, live and direct. Here is my interview with Mr. Jimmy Walter.
Hello.